welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Skaya. Today marks 1 year since the tragedy that stunned Serbia, the deadly collapse of a concrete canopy at Novi Sad's railway station that claimed 16 lives. Now, what began as grief has now become a powerful call for change. Protests continue to this day with students, teachers, and citizens all demanding justice. Now, on the eve of this anniversary, President Aleksandar Vučić urged calm and unity, but his words have not stopped the anger. For more on this, I'm joined by our guest, Vujo Ilić, research fellow at the University of Belgrade. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
So now, before we really get into it, I'm going to ask you to take a listen to President Vucic's address from yesterday.
Let tomorrow be a day that unites us, not a day that further tears us apart. The day when we will unite in the grief of families and show our respect and love for them. Not a day that any of us will use for our own political benefit. And after tomorrow, let's try one more time with dialogue in society. Those who want to protest can continue to do so, but with more respect for their countrymen who disagree with them, with more respect for the laws and rules in society that we all have to follow.
Now, a year after this terrible tragedy, we just heard it, Vujo appeals for dialogue. What would genuine dialogue between government and students look like? And what I really want to know is how you view what he said. Do you believe that his words calling for Serbian unity are honest?
That's a good point, whether this is a genuine call for dialogue or not. Most of the people in Serbia would probably agree that the whole country is in a dire need for dialogue and that the polarization is very high. But we have to take this statement by President Vučić in a wider context. This has been surprising because of its conciliatory and even apologetic tone. But it's not the first time that President Vučić had such statements. It has happened a couple of times in the past. But over the year, in average, President Vučić has, in average, one TV appearance per day. So more than 300, approximately 350 appearances on national television, which is a very high airtime. And during this time, over the last year, he has said some incredibly harmful and accusatory things. And this is the main reason why students to whom this message is directed to, and also I think the majority of citizens, do not take this call as a genuine request for dialogue in the country. Only in the last couple of years, President Vučić has accused the organizers of the commemorative event in Novi Sad of some quite outrageous things that I wouldn't even want to repeat. And a couple of days ago, he pretended that he doesn't know that there is something happening in Novi Sad. When a journalist asked him about the security situation on Saturday, he pretended he doesn't know, and he asked, why is there a football match happening? So his words cannot be taken for granted, and I think that the track record of his attitude and his behavior about this protest has been much more negative than what this statement on one day before the commemoration might sound like.
So so clearly here the main factor here is timing. But then, why do you think then he did it? Was this something as more of a political theater, a theatrics that he tried to showcase, especially exactly like you said, one day before the commemorations? And we'll just get into those events in a moment.
I think messages such as this can be very useful for his, I would say, primarily international audience. The domestic audience in Serbia is very polarized, and there is around 1/3 of people that trust Vučić's messages and 2/3 that do not. And this has been very stable over the last year. And I think this is directed to international audience. Serbia has been under increased pressure from the EU in the last couple of weeks, maybe even in the last month. And messages such as this can be useful for continuing the conversations with his interlocutors in Brussels, Berlin, and Paris, rather than his audiences in Serbia.
Vujo, let me ask you this. What can we expect from today's commemorations? How is that going to look like across the country?
Right. So there hasn't been a large event of this scale since June. So over the summer, there have been much more clashes, especially during July and August because of the police repression during the smaller protests. And then over the last 2 months, it seemed like the energy of the protests have went away. And of course, there has been very much anticipation of what will happen for the 1-year anniversary. And what it looks like right now is that this is going to be the largest gathering of people in Novi Sad's history. Some projections are probably that it's going to be hundreds of thousands of people plus. Students from Novi Sad have been walking for 16 days, over 400 kilometers, and there were countless of columns of people walking, cycling from all across the country to Novi Sad. So the momentum has been building, but the atmosphere of today's event is announced that it will be a largely commemorative event. So it's not going to be, it shouldn't be at least political very much. It shouldn't be very much, conflicting. It should be based on the feelings of sorrow and deep sorrow that the people feel for the event of the last year. I think this will be the primary sentiment of the gathering, which of course doesn't mean some things will not happen. When a lot of people happen to be in a city, it's quite difficult to control such a big crowd.
Let me ask you, we're looking at Vujo as we speak, on screen, these protests, it's such a massive demonstration. It's really happening for a year, and I find it's more than a protest. It's a movement. It's evolved into such a platform, such a movement. But let me ask you this, logically, you have Vucic who speaks out yesterday, right? And he looking at these students and what they want, these reforms. They want answers which they still haven't received. What is it going to take for Vucic to actually begin cooperating with the Serbians?
Well, to be honest, I think that the window of opportunity for cooperation has been closed for a very long time. Vucic have tried to do conciliatory moves in the first couple of months, but this has ended in February of this year. So for more than half a year, it has been mostly conflictual relations between Vucic and the part of Serbian population, which I would say is a majority, that opposes his government and the policies of this government. So I don't honestly see that this is going in the direction of conciliation and finding some sort of compromise about these issues. This has especially changed after May, when the students have started asking for snap elections. And as you know, for the first half a year of the social movement, they have had very specific demands. Once they realize that these demands are not going to be met, they have asked for the new government, and they are going to ask for the new elections, and they're going to put up a list of people for the parliamentary elections that they will support. And this is now the main political issue in Serbia. When are these elections going to be? Vucic has a lot of reasons to be hesitant about calling for these elections, and they are not going to be very predictable, I would say. So this is the largest issue now. And as you said, this is a quite specific, quite unique social movement. You have rightly called it a social movement. It's not just one wave of protest, it's a continuous movement of students which have been joined by other segments of society, from the school teachers to the agricultural workers, and who have jointly now asking for the changes in the country.
How much of a threat do you think now these protests pose to actually Vucic's political survival? You're talking about heading into elections, and how do you view that?
Right. So the first regular elections should be in 2027, which should be presidential elections. Vucic is not going to run for these elections. He has been president twice, and he announced that he is not going to go the path of changing the constitution so that he could run for the third time, which means that these elections are going to be difficult for the ruling party because he is the most powerful person in this party. The other elections which are going to be regular are going to be also in the end of 2027 or even early 2028. But you have to consider that a big event is going to happen in the summer of 2027, which is a specialized expo exhibition in Serbia. A lot of political and also economic capital is being invested in this exhibition. And Vucic is hesitant to have elections which are going to be unpredictable so close to the 2027 mark of Expo. So all the signs are showing in the direction that we will see snap elections sooner rather than later, and that it will happen in 2026. Now, of course, everybody's trying to figure out how is the political scene or the electoral scene going to look at that moment, and it's very difficult to predict, to be honest, because we don't know what the student-supported list is going to look like. What are the opposition parties going to? Are they going to be more collaborative, or are they going to go, with a variety of new lists? So there are a lot of unknowns, and it's an unknown for President Vucic too. This is the main reason why he's not calling for elections. Otherwise, in the last decade and so of the ruling party, Serbian Progressive Party being in power, Serbia had elections in average every 2 years. This has always been a way for Vucic to consolidate his power and to make things more difficult for the opposition parties, which do not have as many resources as the ruling party to run these elections. But now, when the students are calling for this, it's a big challenge for his legitimacy, and it's much more predictable than it ever was.
And Vujo, just before we finish, we have a little under 2 minutes left. I want to ask you, really, what would you say that is at stake for Serbia in this anniversary today?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think that there are many expectations of this event as it happened maybe during the March protest that you have also covered extensively, when people have expected that some change is going to happen after this day. I think that the main expectation on the side of the population, which is supporting the protests and supporting student demands, is that this social movement is going to gain new energy, and that it's going to get more support than it had maybe in the last couple of weeks. So some kind of revival of the movement is expected after this. Numbers are important, and students have shown over this year that when they call the people to join them, people do respond. This is a powerful message. And then what is at stake is precisely what the students have been asking for: is the rule of law, is the accountability, and these are the cornerstones of how political society should be organized. All the eyes are actually on this. We are also closely observing how the judicial processes about the canopy bill are proceeding. And to be honest, if there were no protests in the last year, I don't think we could have seen even this much progress. And there is not much progress when we look at the judicial processes.
Thank you so much, Vujo Ilić, Research Fellow at the University of Belgrade, for being with us here today on World Talks. And that's all for this edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Skaya. Thanks for watching.